Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Colin Watt and Jim Simonetti. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks very much, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
This is the Axon Bulletin, where we talk about what's happened in the world of Celtic over the last 24 hours. There seems to be plenty happening, Colin, over the period, and obviously some of the points have been pretty obvious. We've got Bolingoli still rumbling on, a few developments. Yep. Who's going to replace him? The big question across the bar along the bottom of your screen is Barry Douglas the ideal replacement for Bolingoli? We will have a wee discussion about that. We'll also be talking Shane Duffy, Ivan Toney, and Albion Ajeti, to get his name right, amongst other things. Now, before we go any further, Ollie Burke. What's the story with Ollie Burke, Colin?
So Ollie Burke linked in the Turkish papers, not in the Scottish newspapers, although the story did make its way over here. It's between us and Trabzonspor. I think that might be just clever work from his agent to try and get some more money out of Trabzonspor. Ollie Burke, for me, he runs fast, but still lacks a lot in football technology as such. He controlling the ball, passing the ball, shooting the ball, all the basics is something that he still lacks in. Jim,
controlling, passing and shooting? So what else is there? If you can't do that at that level, what else is there?
Well, I was just about to ask. Just about to ask Jim, if you took him down to the JGA, do you think he could get a couple of training sessions?
Would he get a game?
Good Lord. He's he wouldn't be for me at this particular time.
No, definitely not. I mean, we've seen enough of him. He was a big name player at a young age, wasn't he? And he's had a couple of massive transfers. When he came in, Neil Lennon didn't play him a great deal when Lenny came back in. And as you say, Colin, this is a plant. There's no way there's any substance to that story whatsoever. But we will talk about some of the other names that have been linked to Celtic. But before we do that, Albion Ajeti, we know the pronunciation of his name. He's been announced as Celtic's new number 10. What can you tell us about the deal, Colin? It's an undisclosed fee, but you often get a good idea. Is it around £5 million for Ajeti?
It seems to be around about that mark, between £4.5–5 million for Ajeti. And from what I've seen from his clips at his time at Basel, he certainly looks like the right player to be playing off of Edouard if we're going to play the two up front. Reminds me quite a lot of Gary Hooper. Seems to be in the box at the right place at the right time, which I think will be brilliant if we can get the crosses coming in the way we did last season from Frimpong.
Yes.
Because you're always looking for that player just to be in and around the sort of penalty spot position. Seems to score a lot of goals with his head, which Edouard isn't particularly known for. So it does give you that extra option. I think when you score that amount of goals in a league like the Swiss League, which arguably is a better league than the Scottish League, then you shouldn't have a lot of trouble scoring goals up here. I'm looking forward though to his link-up play with Mohamed Elyounoussi. That was part of their sort of success over at Basel. And seeing those two link up again, maybe he'll get the best out of Elyounoussi, where you think, and you've said on Sunday, you've not seen the best of him so far.
No, well, I'm a big fan. And the way I was thinking about it is that if he's an ex-player, an ex-teammate of Elyounoussi, that in itself might assist, because, Elyounossi's been out of sorts for me. The player that we saw before the League Cup final, and I think it was obviously the wrong choice to play him in that game. He wasn't fit, Colin. But, the Lazio game that you continually go on about, I think you were at the game. He was brilliant that night. He was excellent that night. And that's the Elyounoussi we want to see back in action down that left-hand side. We've seen none of that on Sunday. We know that there was a lack of width, Jim. Yeah. But I think Elyounoussi, if his ex-teammate can maybe bring that out of him again, then brilliant. We've got two players out of one there.
Would you like to see him sitting more on a defensive role, or would you like to see him being in an attacking role?
I think he'll need to do a lot of running for Eddie.
Aye.
Eddie likes your Lee Griffiths, who will do all the defensive running and do all that kind of work. And I'm not calling Edouard lazy. It goes back to the Bruce Lee comments that were made before. He uses his effort when he needs to and his energy. But if he does all the running, then that will benefit Eddie as well, Jim, I think.
Aye, definitely.
And Ajeti, number 10. Colin, you like your squad numbers?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking, I seen a post earlier on today looking at the famous number 10s. Even since I've been following Celtic, we're looking at the likes of John Hartson, Moussa Dembele, and then some of the not so successful ones like Marc-Antoine Fortuné, Ayo Berkovic, and someone we actually touched on Sunday as someone that almost threw his career away as such, Anthony Stokes.
Yeah.
Now, Anthony Stokes, great, fantastic partnership with Gary Hooper. Hopefully we'll see that sort of partnership up front with Edward and with Ajeti.
Didn't Stokes scored the first goal in the 9 in a row? Was he the goal scorer? Yeah. I was a big fan, Anthony Stokes, but you know, if ever there's a warning for Lee Griffiths, it's what has happened to Stokes since he left Hibs. The last club he was linked with was East Kilbride. You know, and that speaks volumes for a guy who should have dozens of international caps. He should have been playing at the top level. He's moved from league to league in obscure countries, Colin, over the last few years, and it's down to behaviour, not his ability, because the guy is a talent. He's always in the papers for the wrong reasons these days. I hate to see players, you know, their careers being cut short through not a lack of ability and not due to injury, but just through bad behaviour, not looking after themselves. We've seen it with Riordan, we've seen it with O'Connor, we've undoubtedly seen it with Stokes. There's no way back for Stokesy, and Griffiths needs to look at that.
And it's quite interesting because Stokes isn't actually that old. I think he's only maybe 32, maybe a push 33.
Yeah.
So for a player of his quality, as you said, he should never have been playing over in Iraq or Iran or wherever he ended up. But it all comes down, as you say, to the mentality. Has he got the state of mind for it? And Jim, you'll have seen it through your coaching. The players have got to have that state of mind that when the pressure is on them, they don't collapse, and it must be part of like the training process.
Of course it is. You've got to have intellectual intelligence and your heart intelligence working together when you're under pressure or when you're not under pressure. So they've got to adapt to every situation, where it be. When you become a professional footballer, they've got to adapt on the field and off the field and be able to deal with different situations that come up. So it's very important that that if you're in a difficult situation, you learn to handle it. Now back to your number 10s, young man.
Yes.
There's a famous man in there as well. His name's Bertie Auld on the number 10s. I know you're a wee bit younger,
Just a wee
but
bit.
when you come to us guys, we can never leave that number 10 out because he's a legend.
The bold Bertie.
The bold Bertie, Paul.
The bold Bertie. I mean, number 10s, it's one of these things I was saying to you, Colin. Squad numbers aren't as important to me as maybe your generation. If you'd asked me to name a few number 10s, I might even have struggled, to be honest with you. Was Bayo number 10, you said?
Bayo was a number 10.
Yeah. Right, so he's come to mammy.
So he is the new now, so Ajeti takes over Bayo's squad number.
All right, so he's got a big name to live up to then. I mean, some of the other ones you mentioned, Fortuné, massive disappointment. He was the classic non-goal scoring forward.
That was the way he was announced to the club as well. And when you come in and as a striker, and I think it was Mark Venus that said at the time, he's a non-goal scoring forward. So what kind of forward is it then? Do you know what I mean?
I know, big unit of a guy. He was playing right up until last season. I think he played up to about 37, 38.
I remember being at McDermott Park and Celtic were either 1 each or 1-0 to St Johnstone at half time. And I said to my pals that were there, I says, we need to get him off at half time. He's contributed absolutely nothing. There's guys on the bench that can come on and make a difference in this game. And he shut me up because he scored an absolute peach from the edge of the box that day.
I remember it.
And we went on to win 4-1. So he had his moments. He scored against Rangers, but
he had a daft celebration as well, didn't he? I know I was criticising Christian Frimpong at the weekend. This signing a contract or signing an autograph. Remember that? Right, it was a big mistake, I think, to shell out on the big name striker, big transfer price striker for Mowbray.
It's quite interesting when we look at the 10s as well, because within that there's someone that is in the same sort of mould as Ajeti, and that is Vennegoor of Hesselink. And that is that he is a registered international. He's played regularly for his country and he's played at a high level, and we've actually shelled out a decent transfer fee for him. So if he produces the same sort of contribution to Celtic as what Vennegoor of Hesselink did, then I think we'll be absolutely delighted with the signing.
We spoke about that, didn't we, when we were talking about the famous goal he scored against Dundee United, and you'd be happy for a player like that to be signed just now from PSV Eindhoven for, what was the fee, 4 million, something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm delighted with Ajeti, and it just gives everybody a lift. Is he in the European squad, Colin?
That's what we're unsure about. The European squad did have to be submitted for the game against KR Reykjavik. Although if he isn't in the squad, we can still add 2 bodies to it right up until 24 hours before.
Right.
But looking at the squad itself, it's a bone of contention for fans, because we do have quite a weak squad in there, because we don't have as many homegrown Celtic trained players anymore. So there's players we are going to have to leave out as we continue to strengthen the squad. So it'll be something to keep an eye on as we progress through these qualifying
And that's
rounds.
why we couldn't fulfil the squad, the full squad there, because we don't have enough homegrown players in there, youth players in there.
We'll have a wee chat about the left back situation as well before we go to the comments that are coming in. Please keep them coming via Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. Your contributions make the Celtic State of Mind Bulletin far more enjoyable for everybody involved, so please keep them coming in. It's good to see Colin in the studio. He was commenting from home or from work, I'm not quite sure which, yesterday. Bit of both. But before we go into some of the comments, Barry Douglas has been linked to Celtic. I remember he was one of those players that Jackie and Sid picked up from Queen's Park back in the day, and his career has gone on an upward trajectory ever since, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think he made his move over to Poland. I think he played for Lech Poznan over there before eventually making his way to Wolves in the Championship. When they got promoted, he was then sold on to Leeds, and he's had 2 successful seasons at Leeds. He seemed to be an integral part of the squad there. I don't know if you've managed to watch the documentary on Leeds United, Take Me Home, where it goes in behind the scenes. And that's what the players touch on, is how influential his experience is. He might not play every week, but being part of that squad really helped them as they were getting towards promotion. So again, a guy that's just turned 30, we're looking at experienced players, no more project players in that position. I would say Greg Taylor's probably still a project player in there, that he's only 21, 22, so he's still developing. So having that extra bit of experience to lean on, I think would be a good move for Celtic.
Or another player that we could bring into the fold there as well, coming away for the 3-5-2s, and since we're talking about the 4-4-2 formation left back, this guy's a centre half, Ben Gibson from Burnley. He cost 15 million for Borough. Granted, he's the Borough owner's nephew. So if he was to slot in at the back there, then we can again, you've got the option of pushing the 2 of them at left back, right back, and we've got the centre back position filled there. So Ben Gibson from Burnley could be a good option as well, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Douglas, Jim. I remember at the time that he was at Dundee United, that he was linked to Celtic even back then. I know he's 30, but really, if a player has looked after themselves, 30's nothing. 30's no age at all. I mean, you look at Scott Brown, and in his early days, I don't think he was as committed into the physical aspect. I say early days, even the kebab gate when Ronnie Dyle was there. Nothing wrong with having a kebab. But I think, if you've looked after yourself, 30's no age at all for a footballer these days, is it?
No, it's no. And I'm quite sure he's looked after himself. So it was interesting, Stevie, yesterday, he was putting Julian right back, wasn't he?
Right centre back, I think that's right.
Right centre back in the 3-5-2. So I would still put him at right back if we go for a 4-4-2 at the back.
Just on that point of formations, Jim, because I know yourself and Stevie manage football teams, have been involved in football and have a different understanding to the casual observers like Colin and I. And it's always interesting to pick your brains about formations. We did get a tweet yesterday on the back of the bulletin talking about the 4-3-3 formation, which has been favoured. I think, is it Atalanta that's been using that to some great effect? And the tweet came in from Howler Tweets, I think it was, asking, is that something that we could utilise as well? Do we have the players that we could use in a 4-3-3? Or is it one of these things you see a club doing it well and then you get this plethora of clubs trying to replicate what they've done?
Yeah. I would work on what's been successful. So I would definitely go for the 3-5-2 formation because it worked for us, and we were successful at it. Going back to a 4-4-2, 3-5-2 formation helps us attack better, gives us width. Wide players being supported by the centre midfield players supporting the strikers. I like that. So I would stick with the 3-5-2 attack, and then going back to a 4-4-2, and then changing the game. But Neil Lennon will change that in the game as he sees fit, going for a 3-5-2 to a 4-4-2. Or if we're defending in the game, maybe going back to a 4-5-1, going into any other formation. I would keep this season to what we've been good at without making too many changes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The other number 10 that we didn't mention, which I would like to mention, is Big John Hartson. Obviously, Big John. He's a favourite of Celtic fans, Colin, and obviously we've seen him in action doing the Q&A. After dinner circuit, and he's a good guy, is Big John.
Yep.
He's looking fantastic. I think he's lost a bit of weight during the lockdown, and when he was doing the punditry for the Celtic game, he's looking great. And it's brilliant to see the big man back on the telly talking about Celtic. He's so passionate about Celtic, and he's one of these guys that came up. He could have signed for Rangers if he didn't feel that medical, but he got Celtic once he got here, didn't he? He's got a great affinity with the fans.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of the players in the current squad could really be doing with kind of getting on that. If you look at someone, and we're getting back to the kind of big topic of the week with Bolingoli, if he understood what this season meant to the fans, would he really have went away and done something as stupid as what he done? I think we spoke about guys like Mikael Lustig before, a guy that totally gets what Celtic's all about. Massimo Donati, Mark Rosas, guys that maybe didn't have the best career at Celtic, but understood what Celtic meant to the fans and became fans themselves. And the more of those players you get around the squad, the better, I think, because when it gets to these crucial moments in the season, when you're going for trophies, when you're trying to upset the odds away from home in Europe, then you get that extra bit out of them because they know what it means to the fans.
Before we go to the questions, which are racking up, thank you all for your contributions. We will get through as many as we possibly can. The Barry Douglas deal, are we talking a permanent deal? And if so, how much would he cost us, Colin?
Well, he's into his last year of his contract at Leeds. So I would assume that we're talking somewhere in the region of around £1 million, £1.5 million to bring him up to Celtic Park. It could be that it's a loan deal. I guess it would all come down to wages. I'd assume that he's on quite a nice wage down at Leeds. They were certainly one of the bigger spenders in the Championship.
Yeah, I'm sure he will be on a good wage. It probably comes down to the fact that we could get him on the same wage as Bolingoli, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, well, that would be interesting. Hopefully, it looks as if Bolingoli will be leaving the side. There's a loan deal in from Amiens in the second division of French football, and they're looking at an option to buy him at the end of the season for around 2.3 million, something along them lines. If we got that deal and we got Barry Douglas in as his replacement, I think it's win-win all round.
I would agree with that. Now let's go to the callers, I think we were calling them yesterday. Let's go to all the comments. First one up is Kevin Graham, who's familiar to anyone who listens to a Celtic State of Mind. Kevin states he has the experience and would push Taylor for the first team spot. I wouldn't be averse, but folk will look at his boyhood Subbuteo team and make judgments. I'm not sure who his boyhood Subbuteo team was. Was it Queen's Park?
Unfortunately, it's the blue side of Glasgow that Barry Douglas brought up supporting. But look at some of the guys that's in the first team squad. James Forrest, Callum McGregor, who have connections to Rangers or were Rangers fans growing up. I think once you put on that jersey, I don't think it really matters who you support.
Does the matter? A wee question is talking about the colours of the jersey. What colour a hat has Kevin's horse got on today?
Kevin, let us know what colour of hat your horse is wearing today. I mean, Greg Taylor was at Rangers, was he not? As a kid?
He was. He's a big Rangers fan. His family are big Rangers fans. It was the same with Lewis Morgan as well. I don't think it really matters at the end of the day. I think these guys now are that professional that they'll give their all no matter who they're playing for.
Unless it's natural novel, right? John Hewitt. Is this the same John Hewitt that scored in European finals for Aberdeen?
Interesting if it was, yeah.
John Hewitt has a question. If Celtic and Aberdeen face retrospective punishment for rule breaches, should we be expecting action on a referee and the Rangers for fielding players without valid test results?
This is the thing, the retrospective punishment, how far can they really go? I feel as if they're out here to make an example of two teams. Now, the Aberdeen situation, that seemed to, we'd moved on from that until Bolingoli's thing came out. Two in a short period of time, understandable that there's going to be such a reaction, but I feel as if there's just a thing within Scottish football that as soon as something major like this happens, it's like, they must be punished and the punishment must never end. We'll keep bringing it back up and we'll look at it and they'll be made an example of, look, the guy made a mistake.
But Colin, the thing is, they've done that and we've done this and now we're going to get them for doing that and then they've done this.
Oh, it's
they've
finger
done
pointing.
It's no good. What you do is you look at it, what's happened, whatever the decisions are today, made, that's it made, you move on. See, if you keep dealing in negativity will come back to you. We've got to think in a positive manner. The Bolingoli is done, dusted, it's gone. You've got to speak now about the positive things for going forward. This is a historical season for us, so we've got to think positive, get rid of the negatives, get them out the way and move forward, and that's what we've got to start doing. As Celtic fans, don't be diverted away to negativity. Stay positive and let's look at what these players that's possibly come in. Hopefully, guys like Douglas and maybe Gibson and other players that's coming along. Look at them. What's gone is gone. It's like a footballer on the park. If he's made a mistake, there's no point in dwelling on it, because you've got to get into the next part of the game. If you dwell on that mistake, you're still in that mistake. It's gone. It's away.
No, you're right. It is. There comes a point, Jim, where we've got to move on from it.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what Neil Lennon's trying to do. You know, he's looking at players. My biggest concern is that there was obviously a tabloid rag sat on a picture for some time before it was released. Is there anything else bubbling under the surface that they're going to... Because if they do, they're damaging Scottish football.
And these people don't realise that their jobs rely on Scottish football as well. I mean, if there was no Scottish football,
Correct.
there would be no phone-ins, there would be no websites, there would be no fan sites, because there would be nothing to talk about. And I think there is a thing within Scotland where we try and talk this game down, whereas, as Jim's saying, we've got to be more positive. Let's draw a line under it. What's been has been, and let's move on. Let's continue to look forward, because there is a lot to be excited about within Scottish football at the minute.
Let's run through some more of the comments that are coming in, Colin. You can comment via YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Keep them coming and we'll work through as many as possible. Jez Clark, Douglas would be a better fit for the Scottish game. Can't see him leaving Leeds though. What is the situation at Leeds, Colin? Was he getting a game?
He was kind of getting phased out last season, and it looks as if he won't be moving on as part of the Premier League squad, which is obviously disappointing for him, but at the age that he's at, he'll be looking to play more first team football, and I think he'll definitely get that at Celtic.
Absolutely. Well, he'll be looking at his international career that I think consists at the moment of a single appearance.
Yeah, but when you look at Scotland, the left back problem is a good problem and not the problem of years gone by where we couldn't get someone to play out there. You've got three fantastic options. There's actually more options within English football and Scottish football that could play at left back for Scotland as well. So the fact that he's third choice isn't a bad thing, because you're looking at guys like Andy Robertson and Kieran Tierney ahead of him.
Absolutely. No, you're spot on. Follower Celtic, thanks for your message via Twitter. And must admit, I've never heard of Barry Douglas, but I think I read that he's 30 years old. He's been out of the Scottish game for some time, Colin, isn't he? And, you know, he's been a success wherever he's gone. I think it'd be a solid acquisition. Ninth Legion is making a comment via YouTube that Ollie Burke is like a racehorse. Here's another horse reference, Jim. but he plays like an elephant. Now, you know, these are the things. These are the things that we need to remember, though. Ollie Burke, at that level, he must have a talent. He must be talented to reach that level of the game and have so many big money transfers. They must have something.
I tell you what, Ollie Burke is a prime example of where some of Scottish football coaching has gone wrong over the last sort of 15 years. When guys are getting released for being too small, he was kind of kept on because he's always been tall, powerful, well built, but he had absolutely no attributes that made him a footballer. He'd be a fantastic sprinter or a racehorse in this example, but this is where we've let guys go because they're too small. Look at Andy Robertson. We let him go. There's so many examples across Scottish football of guys that were let go because they were too small, and he's a guy that wasn't let go. Was always thought that one day he'll come good, and then they were still waiting on that.
He still don't keep good. He's in the race. The race is finished and the horses are still running.
Kevin Selt, we need someone to push Forest on that side. We've heard that comment being made a few times. All the talk left. We need right side as well. That comes in from Bedford Celts. Big shout out to you guys. Thanks for getting involved. Stevie Mullen, a man who is a friend of a Celtic state of mind. Burke couldn't trap a medicine ball in a phone box. Ollie Burke is not getting much love on the Celtic state of mind bulletin today.
Stevie, that's something we agree on. That's not too bad.
Paul, Stevie had stolen motors yesterday. He's
right.
got medicine balls today.
I know.
But sorry, I need to get my track back on here. I can't stop thinking about that.
I'm just waiting on Kevin coming back on the horse. Yep.
I just want to know what colour hat he had.
Aye, absolutely. But we says earlier on.
Come back to Jim later, Paul.
Psycho Candy, a wee Jesus and Mary chain reference there. Barry Douglas would be fantastic. I think he would be a solid signing. Amy Ends would be very silly to sign Bolly. Don't tell them that. Just let them go.
Block him.
Yeah. Neil Warnock also came out today saying he had contact with Celtic over Bolly on loan, but then he went rogue. But I mean, I'm not being funny, but see Neil Warnock, he's not a guy that I respect a great deal, to be fair, Colin.
Paul, why did he not come out before and say he was interested in him? Okay, he can come out now and say it, but there's no danger he was interested at any particular time. But sorry, to get back to what you're saying and what the caller asked as well, we've got to look at the right hand side of the park. We've got to look at all areas of the park. We've got to have cover round the whole area. So if anything does happen, whether it be an injury or two injuries, we've got instant cover right away with players who are in and can fit into the system of play in whatever formation that may be as well, and be able to take the instructions in that the coaching staff are giving them. So that's very important. The whole area of the park, everywhere is important at the moment. Everywhere, actually, not just the parks, when the park's important, all over the club, everything is important. Harmony with the Celtic supporters throughout the world is important. Harmony within the club and within the team and on the park. On the park and off the park. Everything's important this year.
Do you know, it's interesting we're talking about cover on the flanks, and we mentioned earlier Mohamed El Enoussi. Now, I think somewhere that we really did struggle with, especially on Sunday, was someone playing that ball through the middle of the park. Now, if we do move to a 3-5-2, what would your thoughts be on moving El Enoussi inside and playing just off the strikers in that sort of attacking midfield role?
Well, as a younger Celtic supporter, who would your five midfielders be? Who would be at the moment, right? If you don't just think with your heart, think with your head, think with both. Who would you have as your centre mid?
So, if we're going with the 3-5-2 formation, so in the middle of the park, I would probably have McGregor and Cham. On the right, I would play Frimpong. Going with the squad we've got at the minute, on the left, I would play Taylor, and I would have El Enoussi off the two strikers.
What about Jamesy Forrest?
I don't think Forrest offers as much in a defensive capability. Not that Frimpong is the best defender, But having watched Forrest play in that position last year, especially times like when we were away at Livingston and he played in that position, he was far too far forward and he left the defence wide open. So unless he's developed in that understanding of having to track back, then I think Frimpong's a better option.
What about Brown?
So Brown, I think when you're playing that formation, you're already covered in the midfield. I think Brown would be a good option to come off the bench to replace a McGregor or an Encham, as well as Christie as well. Christie could play in a number of those roles in that 5. But I think at the minute that's your strongest 5.
Well, let us know what you think, because if you're dropping Forrest and Brown, Colin, I'm pretty sure there'll be a few people to disagree, but that's fine.
Definitely.
We can ask you about that. Gary Doonan, who is always welcome on A Celtic State of Mind, is commenting on Facebook. Gary reminds us that Stokes was a great player, great strike rate for a second striker. Also had a great season when Delia put him to inside left. I was a big fan of Stokes, I really was, even when he was playing with Hibs and scoring in Scottish Cup finals. I was a massive fan. Stephen Ray, I don't think the 4-2-3-1 suits Celtic, nor does it get the best out of Mo. I would like to see Celtic move to a 4-3-3 or even a 3-4-3 with the front 3 of Mo, Ajeti and Eduard.
It's an interesting one. I've seen discussions before we signed Ajeti, of playing Elyounoussi as a sort of secondary striker off of Edward. And I think that the two do link up well. And obviously we've seen at Basel where Ajeti links up with Elyounoussi. So the 3-4-3 or the 4-3-3, basically with 3 up front, that's an option. But I think when you look at teams that play a sort of 4-3-3, 2 of the guys seem to get further wide. So you're talking that they're going down the channels with the 1 in the middle with the midfield moving up to support. And I would be hesitant to move someone like Edward out wide. We've seen what happened when that happened to Samaras, and you lost the kind of influence of him being in and around the box. I think it was the same when we moved sort of Lee Griffiths out there, and we've done that with strikers before. Where we're best is getting the ball into the box and getting it to the feet or the head of a striker and putting it in the back of the net. And we've got fantastic wingers when fit that can put the ball over. So I think that we do have to look at the formation. But if we've got a 4-4-2 and we've got a 3-5-2, should we be looking at any more than 3 or 4? How many formations do you think, Jim, that a player can learn how to adapt into?
Every.
I agree with you, Jim. I was just
every-
about to say that. We've got the squad.
formation.
We've got the squad. We've got the capabilities now with the increase in the number of substitutes to switch it depending on how things are actually playing, how they're panning out. So we're watching that Kilmarnock game. We've got the personnel to switch that. We can switch it 40 minutes into the game or 80 minutes into the game, just whenever you realise that your game plan's not working. And I think you can never have a fixed and fast rule. You've got the players there. You can change it. Make a couple of substitutions, change it again.
Adapt to the circumstances.
Yep.
As a professional football player, they will know how to play a 4-5-1, a 4-4-2, a 4-3-3, 3-5-2, and dare I say it, even a 2-3-5, which we became famous for, five attackers back in the early days, which actually became a 4-4-2. But they will be able to adapt to every formation that's out there. To draw. Are they capable of playing it successfully? Is another question. But the thing is, they should be able to adapt to every formation the manager asks them to play.
You see, the reason I bring that up is when you look at when we got desperate at times in certain seasons, especially under Tony Mowbray. When you look back at that St Mirren game when we got beat 4-0, we ended up finishing that game with 4 strikers on the pitch, and nobody seemed to know how to play the formation. So you wonder how many formations are being taught in training, and then how many can be implemented on the park. I don't know if you could just say to someone, look, we've never practiced this before, but today we're going 5-3-2, and can the players adapt to that scenario?
O'Neill used to work like that, Colin. That's interesting you say that, because O'Neill used to work like that, and he would just and that would be it. There would be no preparation to a specific formation at times. But I think in this day and age, I reckon Lennon will have 4 or 5 different options in how to shape his team, because you've got your game plan, and then it all changes the minute you step on that pitch. You've got to change. And I think that the key is we do have the personnel, and with the players that he's bringing in, we'll talk about a few more of them in a second or two, then that will just strengthen the adaptability that you're talking about, Jim.
Absolutely. You could set out your game plan, and within the first couple of minutes, that's gone. So there comes the adaptability of each and every individual player. He must adapt to that circumstance. If you were going to be going out and attacking, and all of a sudden you're down maybe 2 or 3 goals, you're going out to defend and you're down 2 or 3 goals, then you've got to come out and attack. If you're up and you're winning, you're still adapting, saying, and it's getting tighter and tighter, I don't want to lose any goals. They've got to adapt to the circumstances.
Now, a Celtic state mind bulletin wouldn't be a bulletin without mentioning Paddy Roberts. So here we go. 9th Legion. I think we should push out the boat and sign Paddy Roberts. He can play across the front and would challenge Jamesy. Gary Doonan made a good point the other day regarding the James Forrest point, that he's played extremely well over the last few seasons without any real challenge to his position. I mean, over the piece. I'm sometimes surprised at the flack that Jamesy gets after one quiet game or one ineffective game. He is, over the piece, one of the most reliable players we've got.
Definitely, and he has his great games and he has his bad games, but even when he has his bad games, he still manages to pop up with an assist here and there. I would say that quite a few fans didn't think he had a great game against Hamilton, but he still produced, I think he had 2 assists in that game. So he is one of those players that he's not going to take on 6 and 7 players like Paddy Roberts did. And that's what fans want to see. They want to see that guy that will take on the players. But what Forrest actually does is, quite quietly and quite effectively, he creates the goals for the strikers, and he scores himself. And when you look at the form he's had over the last sort of 3 seasons, he's never been an 8 or 9 out of 10 every week. He's always gave you a 7 or a 6 here or there, and he'll have odd games where, like for example, when we played St Johnstone and he scored 4.
Yeah.
So he's definitely one of those players that he's consistent, and that's what we're going to need this season.
Keep the comments coming in. Kevin Selt, don't know what was seen in Bolly. He's the worst defender I've ever seen at Celtic Park. Listen, there's been a lot of bad defenders at Celtic Park. I don't think Bolly's one of the worst. Even
in my time, I can name guys like Tyler Blackett and Josh Thompson, and he's definitely
back bad memories, big man.
Tyler Blackett away at Pittodrie was the worst defensive performance I think Scottish football.
I should forgot all about him, Paul.
Oh, there's been some horrific defenders over.
It wasn't as bad as that.
Don't go there.
Let's go.
Gary Doonan, number 10s. Davy Hay, 72 to 74.
Absolutely.
Kenny Dalglish, number 10 from 76 to 77, and Paul Lambert before squad numbers.
Excellent. See what you started?
Telling you, there is a thing about squad numbers. I think it's more important than some people think it is, and people have got that in their head. When you were growing up, I wanted to be number 7 because of Henrik, and I'm sure there's people that wanted to be number 8 now, kids growing up, because of Scott Brown. So there is something about squad numbers.
Well, is that a new thing though? Is that a new thing? I mean, it doesn't bother me. You could be wearing number 99, it wouldn't bother me. It's all about your performance.
I think when you look back though at a jersey and it's just got a number on the back of it, everyone will have a different player that wore that number. If I look at a number 7 jersey, to me, it's Henrik. It won't have a name on it, it'll just have the number 7 on it. But for you guys, Jimmy Johnson, other players like that,
Joe Miller, me Super Joe.
There's 3 different options, but this is the common denominator is the number.
Well, you're right, and I think the man to your left would definitely say Jimmy Johnson. So it's a good opportunity now, Jim, for you to tell us a wee bit more about some opportunities at the Jimmy Johnson for some new players if you want to get involved.
Definitely, the guys are looking for players 2007 age group and 2009 training at the moment, 2 nights a week. Obviously, we can't tell anybody when the football starting. But yeah, 2007s, 2009s, and we're looking also at an initiative working hand in hand with St Roch's that we want to launch an under 18 team. So and that would be part of feeding through to St Roch's and the girls programme as well. We're looking forward to that getting started back. I was actually speaking to Tina who has been helping us on that as well. She was asking me about that. So as quick as we can to get the girls back as well. But unfortunately, the news today as well, coming away from the Jimmy Johnston Academy news, it's disappointing that the players 18 and over have all been stopped from training as of today. So no training at all. For whatever reason the government's come out with on that. Something must have happened, or they've just been careful going along the way. I'd like to find out a wee bit more about it. I've just found out in the last 30 minutes about that. So if any of the callers or the viewers know anything else about that, they could let us know. So that's disappointing. I just hope that the kids are back at school now. I hope they don't pull the training for the young kids from 18 under. I hope everything's all right with that.
Yeah, and I think there's an irony there that they're asking people to eat out, to help out, to go and have a meal out 3-4 times a week when there's things like gyms and public training sessions that I've been told that they can't restart again.
Yeah.
I think what you guys do at the JGA and with the guys at St Roch's, it's not just about developing youngsters, it's helping people that are struggling with mental health and that are overweight, and they need to find that way to help themselves. And the fact that this has been stopped, for me, I think is a bad call, but hopefully it won't be for too long and you guys will be back up and running again.
Yeah.
Here's hoping, Colin. Gary Doonan, another good point, Gary. Andy Robertson, same age group as Callum McGregor as a youth, and was 1.5 inches taller than McGregor. McGregor stayed, Robertson was obviously free to go. So that's an interesting point, because Callum McGregor went on to become a modern day legend, I think it's safe to say, within the Celtic side.
Definitely.
And he's a pivotal member of what we hope will be the 10 in a row team as we move forward. Before going through some more of these comments, keep them coming in via Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. Let's have a wee look at some of the other names that are flying around, Colin, in the world of Celtic transfers. We spoke quite a bit yesterday about Shane Duffy. Is there any further update on that? You were telling me that Lenny has entered the private talk stage with that.
It's an interesting one, that, Paul, isn't it? I mean, it seems as though this is the approach that Lennon has been taking. He seems to get very much involved in these transfers, and it seems as though he's managed to convince not only Ajeti but Barkas and in the season before Julienne to make the move over to Celtic. So, I mean, to be honest, if you're looking for someone to sell Celtic to people, you wouldn't find somebody that could do a better job than Neil Lennon. I mean, Neil Lennon is Mr. Celtic, and if he can't convince you to join, then you'll never join.
No, I've actually, in me looking at my team, and I'm thinking forward to Tuesday night. I would have the Barkas actually is my number one goalkeeper at the moment because of the investment in him as well, Paul. There's a lot of investment in him, and I'm confident that Duffy, would he be able to play on?
We would have to sign him before 11 p.m. on Monday night.
So if he was, maybe he could slot into the centre back position with Julian and Ajeti either side of him. And I've actually changed it around a wee bit with my five, with Frimpong, Ensham, Brown, Christie on the inside of Forrest. So I'm switching Forrest over and Frimpong on the channel as well. So I've got them two as wide guys there with Ajeti and Edward up front. So the reason I put Duffy in there is I would love to see him here, hopefully in the next 48 hours. I think it would be great. It would be great for us it'd be great if he came in.
I think the only stumbling block we'll have with Shane Duffy is there is interest from bigger sides that are prepared to pay them money, whereas I believe Celtic's looking for a loan deal.
That's right.
So it may come down to the player telling Brighton, my heart and my head is going to Celtic and I won't go elsewhere. And I think if they're looking to restructure their wage budget ahead of the next season, then Shane Duffy would be someone they'll probably look to.
I was actually with a few guys, run about the same age as yourself, Colin, run about the 24, 25, 26 year age group. And I asked them about Duffy. He said they love Duffy to come. He's getting that big money, but why would he drop 30, 40, 50 grand a week to come? And I said, well, if he is of a Celtic mind and an Irish connection, if I was him, I would say I can go and be part of history for a year and maybe not get as much money, but be an historical figure for the remainder of my life and for years and years to come. Yep. And they looked at me as well, and they were as if to say, but people don't do that. So maybe I'm of the older generation, or my generation, that still think that history is important for Celtic, and maybe certain players out there don't think it's as important as money. But history with Celtic Football Club is eternal.
You're absolutely right. Now, you've given us a lineup for Tuesday night.
Yep.
Your favoured lineup rather. Stevie Mullen asked the question, what is your favoured formation and what team would you pick? So I'll ask you the question as well, Colin. Let's have a wee look ahead to Tuesday night. Give us a formation, give us a team.
I think I would go with a 3-5-2 as well. Okay. I think it's Lennon's favoured formation. We were desperately trying to get there even under Rodgers. When we had Edouard and Dembele up front, we played Standard Liège and we played Livingston, and we were going with a 3-5-2 formation. And as a fan, there's nothing more exciting than seeing a partnership up front really working well. When you look back over Celtic's history, Larsson and Hartson, Venegoor of Hesselink and McDonald, even before that, it's a part of Celtic's play is having that partnership up front. Mm-hmm. So I would go with a 3-5-2. If we don't get Duffy in ahead of time, I think Elhamed will slot in as the third defender, and we'll go with Julian, Elhamed and Ayer. I would go with Frimpong on the right, probably bring in McGregor. I can't see Brown being dropped because he's the captain, so he'll probably play in that role. And then you're looking at the third midfielder. Who will that be? If it was me, I would play Elianusi, but I feel as though Ryan Christie will have to go and have a couple of poor games before he gets dropped out of the side. So Christie will slot in there, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Greg Taylor playing the left wing back role, and up front Ajeti and Edouard. But it does mean that we will have some more options coming off the bench, the likes of Klamala, Elianusi if he's not playing, and Cham, guys like that who can come on and change the game. But I'd like to think that we would be pretty comfortable against this side.
Well, I hope so. The team I would go with is Barkas, Julien, Elhamed and Ayer. Mm-hmm. 3 at the back. Forrest, McGregor, Brown, Elianusi. Christie in front with Edouard and Ajeti up front. That'd be my team. And then you're looking at the bench, you're looking at people like Encham, hopefully Tommy Roderick, hopefully Lee Griffiths, Frimpong and Taylor. And you can change it around, from there. Sorrell would be on the bench, Klamala would be on the bench.
Dembele, guys like that. And I think that's where we lacked the options on Sunday. When we changed it, we could only really bring on Klamala. Mm-hmm. No one else was really going to change that game. And Cham, perhaps, but I think he got about 5 or 10 minutes at a push, so
it's not enough.
It's not.
Now, it's been a fantastic bulletin once again. Thank you all for tuning in. It's been a busy bulletin, as it always is in the world of Celtic. Thank you all for joining us on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. We'll be back again for another live broadcast tomorrow on A Celtic State of Mind. All that's left for me to say is, Colin Watt, Jim Simonetti, thanks for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Thanks very much for having us.